for partner ya, tentunya dari Korea yang mungkin kalau kita on desk research atau dari pameran-pameran belum tentu ketemu. Di sini kita bisa langsung ketemu dengan bisa partnering langsung lah, business to business meeting dengan si company-company dari Korea, terutama kan yang biasa datang ke sini yang startup kan, yang mungkin nggak tercapture untuk ikut di pameran-pameran besar gitu, padahal punya potensi.
Sebetulnya negara Korea sendiri kan sangat terkenal di Indonesia. Jadi dari berbagai macam aspek ya. Pertama pasti K-wave, K-popnya. Nah dari situ kita mendapatkan informasi juga mengenai produk-produk Korea seperti kosmetiknya, kemudian skincare-nya dan sebagainya. Dan juga banyak produk farmasi Korea yang sebetulnya sudah cukup terkenal di dunia. Nah, itu sebabnya kenapa kita ingin datang ke acara KOTRA ini.
for partner ya, tentunya dari Korea yang mungkin kalau kita on desk research atau dari pameran-pameran belum tentu ketemu. Di sini kita bisa langsung ketemu dengan bisa partnering langsung lah, business to business meeting dengan si company-company dari Korea, terutama kan yang biasa datang ke sini yang startup kan, yang mungkin nggak tercapture untuk ikut di pameran-pameran besar gitu, padahal punya potensi.
Sebetulnya negara Korea sendiri kan sangat terkenal di Indonesia. Jadi dari berbagai macam aspek ya. Pertama pasti K-wave, K-popnya. Nah dari situ kita mendapatkan informasi juga mengenai produk-produk Korea seperti kosmetiknya, kemudian skincare-nya dan sebagainya. Dan juga banyak produk farmasi Korea yang sebetulnya sudah cukup terkenal di dunia. Nah, itu sebabnya kenapa kita ingin datang ke acara KOTRA ini.
For partner ya, tentunya dari Korea yang mungkin kalau kita on desk research atau dari pameran-pameran belum tentu ketemu. Di sini kita bisa langsung ketemu dengan bisa partnering langsung lah, business to business meeting dengan si company-company dari Korea, terutama kan yang biasa datang ke sini yang startup kan, yang mungkin nggak tercapture untuk ikut di pameran-pameran besar gitu, padahal punya potensi.
Sebetulnya negara Korea sendiri kan sangat terkenal di Indonesia. Jadi dari berbagai macam aspek ya. Pertama pasti K-wave, K-popnya. Nah dari situ kita mendapatkan informasi juga mengenai produk-produk Korea seperti kosmetiknya, kemudian skincare-nya dan sebagainya. Dan juga banyak produk farmasi Korea yang sebetulnya sudah cukup terkenal di dunia. Nah, itu sebabnya kenapa kita ingin datang ke acara KOTRA ini.
for partner ya tentunya dari Korea yang mungkin kalau kita on desk research atau dari pameran-pameran belum tentu ketemu. Di sini kita bisa langsung ketemu dengan bisa partnering langsung lah, business to business meeting dengan si company-company dari Korea, terutama kan yang biasa datang ke sini yang startup kan, yang mungkin nggak tercapture untuk ikut di pameran-pameran besar gitu, padahal punya potensi.
Sebetulnya negara Korea sendiri kan sangat terkenal di Indonesia. Jadi dari berbagai macam aspek ya. Pertama pasti K-wave, K-popnya. Nah dari situ kita mendapatkan informasi juga mengenai produk-produk Korea seperti kosmetiknya, kemudian skincare-nya dan sebagainya. Dan juga banyak produk farmasi Korea yang sebetulnya sudah cukup terkenal di dunia. Nah, itu sebabnya kenapa kita ingin datang ke acara KOTRA ini.
For partner ya tentunya dari Korea yang mungkin kalau kita on desk research atau dari pameran-pameran belum tentu ketemu. Di sini kita bisa langsung ketemu dengan bisa partnering langsung lah, business to business meeting dengan si company-company dari Korea, terutama kan yang biasa datang ke sini yang startup kan, yang mungkin nggak tercapture untuk ikut di pameran-pameran besar gitu, padahal punya potensi.
Sebetulnya negara Korea sendiri kan sangat terkenal di Indonesia. Jadi dari berbagai macam aspek ya. Pertama pasti K-wave, K-popnya. Nah dari situ kita mendapatkan informasi juga mengenai produk-produk Korea seperti kosmetiknya, kemudian skincare-nya dan sebagainya. Dan juga banyak produk farmasi Korea yang sebetulnya sudah cukup terkenal di dunia. Nah, itu sebabnya kenapa kita ingin datang ke acara KOTRA ini.
for partner ya tentunya dari Korea yang mungkin kalau kita on desk research atau dari pameran-pameran belum tentu ketemu. Di sini kita bisa langsung ketemu dengan bisa partnering langsung lah, business to business meeting dengan si company-company dari Korea, terutama kan yang biasa datang ke sini yang startup kan, yang mungkin nggak tercapture untuk ikut di pameran-pameran besar gitu, padahal punya potensi.
Sebetulnya negara Korea sendiri kan sangat terkenal di Indonesia. Jadi dari berbagai macam aspek ya. Pertama pasti K-wave, K-popnya. Nah dari situ kita mendapatkan informasi juga mengenai produk-produk Korea seperti kosmetiknya, kemudian skincare-nya dan sebagainya. Dan juga banyak produk farmasi Korea yang sebetulnya sudah cukup terkenal di dunia. Nah, itu sebabnya kenapa kita ingin datang ke acara KOTRA ini.
For partner ya tentunya dari Korea yang mungkin kalau kita on desk research atau dari pameran-pameran belum tentu ketemu. Di sini kita bisa langsung ketemu dengan bisa partnering langsung lah, business to business meeting dengan si company-company dari Korea, terutama kan yang biasa datang ke sini yang startup kan, yang mungkin nggak tercapture untuk ikut di pameran-pameran besar gitu, padahal punya potensi.
Sebetulnya negara Korea sendiri kan sangat terkenal di Indonesia. Jadi dari berbagai macam aspek ya. Pertama pasti K-wave, K-popnya. Nah dari situ kita mendapatkan informasi juga mengenai produk-produk Korea seperti kosmetiknya, kemudian skincare-nya dan sebagainya. K-wave, K-popnya. Nah dari situ kita mendapatkan informasi juga mengenai produk-produk Korea seperti kosmetiknya, kemudian skincare-nya dan sebagainya. Dan juga banyak produk farmasi Korea yang sebetulnya sudah cukup terkenal di dunia. Nah, itu sebabnya kenapa kita ingin datang ke acara KOTRA ini.
for partner ya tentunya dari Korea yang mungkin kalau kita on desk research atau dari pameran-pameran belum tentu ketemu. Di sini kita bisa langsung ketemu dengan bisa partnering langsung lah, business to business meeting dengan si company-company dari Korea, terutama kan yang biasa datang ke sini yang startup kan, yang mungkin nggak tercapture untuk ikut di pameran-pameran besar gitu, padahal punya potensi.
Sebetulnya negara Korea sendiri kan sangat terkenal di Indonesia. Jadi dari berbagai macam aspek ya. Pertama pasti K-wave, K-popnya. Nah dari situ kita mendapatkan informasi juga mengenai produk-produk Korea seperti kosmetiknya, kemudian skincare-nya dan sebagainya. Dan juga banyak produk farmasi Korea yang sebetulnya sudah cukup terkenal di dunia. Nah, itu sebabnya kenapa kita ingin datang ke acara KOTRA ini.
For partner ya tentunya dari Korea yang mungkin kalau kita on desk research atau dari pameran-pameran belum tentu ketemu. Di sini kita bisa langsung ketemu dengan bisa partnering langsung lah, business to business meeting dengan si company-company dari Korea, terutama kan yang biasa datang ke sini yang startup kan, yang mungkin nggak tercapture untuk ikut di pameran-pameran besar gitu, padahal punya potensi.
Sebetulnya negara Korea sendiri kan sangat terkenal di Indonesia. Jadi dari berbagai macam aspek ya. Pertama pasti K-wave, K-popnya. Nah dari situ kita mendapatkan informasi juga mengenai produk-produk Korea seperti kosmetiknya, kemudian skincare-nya dan sebagainya. Dan juga banyak produk farmasi Korea yang sebetulnya sudah cukup terkenal di dunia. Nah, itu sebabnya kenapa kita ingin datang ke acara KOTRA ini.
partner ya tentunya dari Korea yang mungkin kalau kita on desk research atau dari pameran-pameran belum tentu ketemu. Di sini kita bisa langsung ketemu dengan bisa partnering langsung lah, business to business meeting dengan si company-company dari Korea, terutama kan yang biasa datang ke sini yang startup kan, yang mungkin nggak tercapture untuk ikut di pameran-pameran besar gitu, padahal punya potensi.
Sebetulnya negara Korea sendiri kan sangat terkenal di Indonesia. Jadi dari berbagai macam aspek ya. Pertama pasti K-wave, K-popnya. Nah dari situ kita mendapatkan informasi juga mengenai produk-produk Korea seperti kosmetiknya, kemudian skincare-nya dan sebagainya. Dan juga banyak produk farmasi Korea yang sebetulnya sudah cukup terkenal di dunia. Nah, itu sebabnya kenapa kita ingin datang ke acara KOTRA ini.
for partner ya tentunya dari Korea yang mungkin kalau kita on desk research atau dari pameran-pameran belum tentu ketemu. Di sini kita bisa langsung ketemu dengan bisa partnering langsung lah, business to business meeting dengan si company-company dari
안녕하십니까. 한인리 메디컬 온라인 로드쇼 2020에 참석해 주셔서 감사합니다. 저는 이 웨비나의 사회를 담당하게 된 코트라 자카르타 무역관의 유승현 과장입니다. 반갑습니다. 본 웨비나는 코로나19 위기 속에도 한국과 인도네시아 양국 간 의료 협력을 촉진시키기 위해 마련되었습니다. 바쁜 일정에도 불구하고 귀한 시간을 내주신 대사님, 연사님들, 그리고 국내기업 관계자분들께 깊은 감사의 말씀을 올립니다. 주 인도네시아 대한민국 대사관 박태성 대사님의 축사를 시작으로 축사가 끝나는 10시 15분부터 12시 15분까지 약 2시간 동안 총 3개의 주제에 대해 발표가 영어로 진행됩니다. 발표 주제, 연사정보 등 관련 자료는 구글드라이브 링크로 다운받으셔서 활용해 주시기 바랍니다. 시간 관계상 연사별 질의응답 시간은 생략할 예정임을 안내드리며 이에 양해를 구합니다. 그럼 한인리 메디컬 온라인 로드쇼 2020을 위해 주 인도네시아 대한민국 대사관 박태성 대사님의 축사가 있습니다. 환영해 주시기 바랍니다.
여러분 반갑습니다. 주 인도네시아 대한민국 대사 박태성입니다. Selamat pagi semuanya. Senang bertemu dengan Bapak dan Ibu sekalian. Saya Pak Taesong, Duta Besar Republik Korea di Indonesia. 코로나19 팬데믹으로 지금 전 세계가 고통을 받고 있습니다. 이같이 어려운 상황에도 불구하고 오늘 2020년 한 인도네시아 온라인 메디컬 로드쇼를 개최하게 되어 매우 기쁘게 생각합니다. 오늘의 행사가 비록 비대면으로 진행되지만 그 성과는 과거 어느 때보다도 더 풍성하기를 기원합니다. 먼저 오늘의 행사의 중요성을 감안해서 기조연사로 직접 나와주신 인도네시아 보건부 앵코 차관보님께 감사의 말씀을 드립니다. 이부 앵코 terima kasih atas pidatonya. 여러분 모두가 잘 알고 계시듯이 코로나19와 싸우는 것은 한 국가의 힘만으로는 가능하지 않습니다. 국가 간의 연대와 협력이 무엇보다 중요합니다. 한국과 인도네시아 양국은 코로나19 극복을 위해 진단, 추적, 치료 분야뿐만 아니라 필수 인력의 이동 등 여러 다양한 분야에서 긴밀하게 협력을 해오고 있습니다. 한국은 인도네시아를 중점 방역 협력 국가로 선정하고 코로나 확산 초기부터 1천만 불 상당의 방역 물품을 지원하였습니다. 한국 정부는 600만 불 상당의 무상 ODA 자금을, 민간에서는 기업 CSR 차원에서 400만 불을 제공한 바가 있습니다. 특히 코로나19 확산 초기 양국의 방호복 부족 문제를 해결하기 위해 한국은 원단 제공, 인도네시아는 방호복 제작이라는 양국 간 연대와 협력의 모범 사례를 실현하기도 하였습니다. 특히 코로나19의 확산 속에서도 양국은 트래블 코리도 어그리먼트라는 필수 기업 인력의 입국 절차 간소화 방안을 마련해서 기묘한 경제협력 사업에 차질을 주지 않도록 협력을 펼치기도 하였습니다. 코로나19와 관련된 가장 크고 의미 있는 협력은 코로나19 예방 백신과 치료제 개발 및 생산을 위한 연대 협력이라고 생각합니다. 현재 양국 기업 간에는 전략적인 협력이 잘 진행되고 있는데 인도네시아 정부 차원의 전폭적인 지원을 부탁드립니다. 한국 정부도 힘껏 돕도록 하겠습니다. 특히 2017년에 체결한 한인도네시아 보건의료협력 MOU가 코로나19, 바이오 헬스, 제약 및 디지털 케어 등 양국 보건의료 플랫폼으로 발전하기를 기원합니다. 오늘 웨비나로 열리는 온라인 메디컬 로드쇼는 한인도네시아 보건협력 기업 간 만남의 장입니다. 이번 행사에 제약, 진단 및 의료기기 등 여러 분야에서 한국 53개, 인도네시아 61개 기업, 총 114개 기업이 참여하고 있습니다. 이번 행사를 통해서 양국 보건의료 기업 간의 협력 사업이 더 많아지게 되어 코로나19 극복과 국민 보건의료 수준의 향상으로 이어지기를 바랍니다. 양국 간 협력 사업에 대한 인도네시아 보건당국의 관심과 지원을 이 자리를 빌어서 다시 한번 부탁드립니다. 오늘 행사의 성공을 위해 열성적으로 지원해준 인도네시아 보건부, 한국보건산업진흥원, 그리고 주 자카르타 코트라 무역관 관계자 모두에게 정말로 감사하다는 말씀을 드립니다. 감사합니다. Terima kasih atas perhatian Anda.
네, 대사님 감사합니다. 그럼 지금부터 설명회 첫 순서를 진행하겠습니다. 첫 순서는 코로나19 시대 인도네시아 의료시장 동향분석입니다. 프로스트&설리반 데니시 부사장님께서 발표하십니다.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, great. It's a pleasure to be speaking today on this platform. It's a privilege. My name is Dinesh, and I head the healthcare business for Frost&SULLIVAN in Asia Pacific. For those of you who don't know what Frost&SULLIVAN does, Frost&SULLIVAN is a research and consulting firm based in the US. Our healthcare practice covers different segments within healthcare, right from life sciences, medical devices, imaging, and digital health. And that is what you will see being covered today in the presentation with that we'll be presenting in a short while. In the interest of time, I will not get into the background of the COVID statistics for Indonesia or looking at the state of economy due to the COVID impact. But we will dive directly into the impact of COVID on the healthcare industry for Indonesia and the opportunities that lie for companies that are participating in this market. So if you can go to the next slide. Okay, the way that we have looked at this market, and this has been the work that we have done across the globe. We have worked on the impact of COVID on the healthcare industry. We have analyzed the impact of COVID by each healthcare segments. And the way that we will look at this is also looking at the impact and growth of opportunities in different segments. We look at hospitals, we look at life sciences industry, we will look at the digital health industry, medical technology, and the medical imaging industry. One of the common themes that you will see across all the segments is the leverage of digital. And that's, I think, is a very critical point or an important aspect to be to note as to how digital is playing a role in the healthcare space, and it will play a prominent role going ahead after the COVID, after the COVID situation. Next slide. So Frost&Sullivan did a research with different CXOs across the globe, and this is across industries, and this is not just primarily with the healthcare industry. But you can see that there is a lot of similarities in what are the top of mind issues for the CXOs in any company. And some of these are short-term focus, some of them like cash and liquidity crisis. We are looking at cost and operations optimization. And these are some of the aspects that companies have been looking at it from a short-term focus because of the impact that they have had on their business. Disrupted supply chains, I think, is a short-term focus as well. But from a business continuity standpoint, you'll also see that companies have started looking at alternate supply chains. They are looking at how do they sort of diversify their supply chains, so that their business is not impacted when such sort of a scenario emerges again. I think from a long-term perspective, what companies are doing are they're also looking at they have diminished sales pipeline, so it's the right time for them to look at where do they get their next phase of growth from. We are looking at revisiting established business models because a lot of things has changed and a lot of disruption has happened because of digital, and hence you will also see that a lot of CXOs are thinking about the digital maturity. How do they enhance digital maturity within their own organization? They're also looking at, because a lot of customers or patients or customers today are adopting digital. So there are redefined business models today. So what are those redefined business models? How are the customer engagement models changing, and how can they build around the new customer engagement models? And this is applicable even for industries like healthcare. How do you look at redesigning the patient engagement models? So these are some of the critical aspects that we found were on top of the CXO's mind. Some of them, as I said, are short-term focused, but a lot of it is in terms of how to drive growth opportunities in the future, I think is a critical aspect. So having looked at what are some of the top of mind issues, let's look at what are some of the impacts of COVID on each of these segments within the healthcare space, and what are the opportunities that are available in the healthcare space in the Indonesia market. Next slide. Okay, can we move on to the next slide, please? So this, one of the key segments that has been impacted due to COVID has been the hospital industry, the healthcare services industry. And largely, if you look at the hospital industry, one of the bigger challenges has been in terms of hospitals' response to the pandemic, right? One of the challenges is hospitals are looking at COVID patients as well as the non-COVID patients. And hence, it's becoming extremely challenging for hospitals to be able to prioritize the COVID patients as well as the non-COVID patients. And which means that there are challenges in terms of expansion of ICU beds, there are challenges in terms of testing, how do you look at patients coming in with trauma. I think it's extremely critical for hospitals to start looking at clustering hospitals that can treat the COVID patients and looking at hospitals that need to treat non-COVID patients. It's also likely that a lot of hospitals may come under the command of pandemic response leadership. That may again put a lot of stress on the hospitals itself, which may have a negative impact on the hospitals. What we are also seeing, and we have seen this across the globe, not just with hospitals in Indonesia, but across Southeast Asia, across developed countries as well, their ability to to have logistics, to the ability to be able to provide required ventilators, PPE kits, different types of medical devices has been a challenge to meet the requirement. So hospitals will have to start looking at logistics, and they may even have to store their inventory beyond a certain time period, which will also have an impact on hospitals, P&L sort of, or the cash flow itself because of increased inventory. The other impact also has been in terms of a lot of the hospitals or the ambulatory sites have been transitioned into the pandemic virus test sites, which means that it's no more just hospitals or the clinics that have been, that are being positioned as the testing facilities, but the testing is where the patients are. So there is a lot of changes that have been happening in terms of how hospitals have sort of, responded to this situation in terms of the COVID testing. And one of the important aspects that we have seen, and one of the challenges for hospitals, the impact of COVID has been in terms of their operational capital. On one side, there has been challenges, or on one side, there has been a decrease in the inflow of patients for chronic disease. At the same time, we have hospitals that are treating the COVID patients as well, but then they don't just have that capacity, or they just don't have the cash flow to be able to manage, because the reimbursement itself is taking time. Although a lot of countries, have sort of looked at, faster reimbursement, but we believe that hospital industry will sort of, lobby for a real-time flexible claim reimbursement, because this does not, because the delay in the reimbursement does not allow the hospital to sustain for a long time. Next. So what are the opportunities in the hospital industry? Although this slide may not capture everything that's out there, but the three critical aspects or the three critical opportunity areas for players in the hospital space and others as well has been, one is to look at a flexible sort of a model to be able to expand the ICU beds. And that will be a key focus for hospitals, the existing hospitals, but also the new hospitals as well that are coming up. How do they sort of develop, how does the construction efforts rapidly expand to reconfigure hospital beds, look at renovation, addition of isolation floors is very critical. So these are some of the aspects that hospitals will have to start looking at. Then these are opportunities not just for the hospitals, but also for other players who are feeding into the hospital industry. We have seen some new business models, or new, I would say rather, patient care models that are coming into place. And this has been in the industry for quite some time. You'll see models such as eICU, which means that the patient does not really have to be in an ICU, but the ICU setting can be created where the patient is. And this is primarily outside a hospital setting or a clinical setting. And what it does is it really helps, the hospitals increase the capacity of ICU beds without actually increasing the physical infrastructure. And these patients can be monitored through remote monitoring, through digital platforms, and hence this can really help expand the capacity of the ICU beds for the hospitals. The other aspect that we think is an opportunity, post-COVID for a lot of hospitals is to sort of look at adoption of telemedicine platforms. Some of the hospitals have already done it to be able to remotely diagnose and treat patients, but at the same time, we are also seeing that there is evolution in terms of the adoption itself of telemedicine platform. We're also looking at a cloud-based platform. I think the biggest challenges has been in the healthcare industry has been the integration of various sorts of data points. And hence, there is an opportunity for hospitals to be able to leverage cloud platforms and to integrate the existing EMR platforms with all sources of data that's coming in to be able to diagnose and monitor patients over a long-term time period. Next. So let's look at the impact on the life sciences industry. And when we look at life science industry, this comprises both of diagnostic space as well as the pharma industry. If you look at from a diagnostic standpoint, there have been resource constraints. Looking at how do you carry out the IVD testing, specifically when you're talking about unavailability of let's say swabs, unavailability of equipment. That has been a challenge. The testing, RT-PCR equipments. So resource constraints has been one of the challenges. In some countries, there have been challenges in terms of equipments being there, but the personnel not being there, or the people not being there to be able to provide the testing. So that has been one of the challenges. It has impacted the industry negatively. There are new modalities of POCT diagnostic solutions. Some of these are like the RT-PCR. Some of them have been fast-tracked in certain countries, and that has had a positive effect on the industry itself. If you look at the pharma industry, and this has been the case largely for companies that have been operating in some of the niche specialty areas, they have been impacted largely, or more impacted than companies that are a diversified portfolio, not just having specialty drugs, but also operating in areas like the supplements and other areas which are critical going ahead post-COVID situation. Also, acceleration of registration process in some countries has actually impacted positively, and that is something that Indonesia also has sort of put on paper. So that is going to impact the industry in a more positive way. The API supply, specifically when we look at generics, and largely, if you look at the market, 60% of the APIs for the generics is supplied by countries like China and India. And the countries that have been hit, it has had its own sort of cascading or domino effects on the pharma industry. And that has reduced the pharma manufacturing to almost like 50% of its capacity. So companies have been trying to sort of relook at their supply chains, diversifying the supply chain. So that's been the positive part, but the APIs has had a negative impact on the industries itself. Next. So what are the opportunities in the life sciences space? One of the areas that companies have already started looking is the agile biomanufacturing, because to meet the demand in the industry, one needs to be agile. One needs to look at different models as to how can they scale capacity. And one of the opportunities is to look at what we call as advanced manufacturing technologies that may have smaller footprints but can be quickly be assembled to be able to start the manufacturing much faster. And one of those are looking at GE Healthcare, which has its own sort of manufacturing pods that can reduce the time to set up, and those are pre-approved pods by the FDA. So that really helps in sort of looking at agile biomanufacturing. It's also the capacity to manufacture some of the chronic related drugs as well, because chronic disease related drugs, because that's going to be a critical aspect post-COVID situation, where a lot of the chronic patients will start looking at telemedicine platforms. Prescription can go up beyond the COVID situation, so there could be a spike in terms of the demand for these drugs. We're looking at supply chain and product diversification. I think we've talked about this before. There are opportunities for companies to sort of start developing domestic manufacturing instead of importing some of these materials for drug manufacturing. And I think that's a critical aspect. If you can identify companies that are in the supply chain that are ready to relocate to Indonesia, some of the companies that are supplying APIs or chemicals could relocate to Indonesia. And that could be an opportunity for a country like Indonesia. Point of care testing services, we have seen a lot of the retail clinics being converted into testing hotspots. We are also looking at airports. And there have been companies that are looking at sort of enterprise, sort of COVID testing, which means that you are really enabling the testing of COVID at the sites itself where there's a larger population. So there are some new techniques that are coming up. So it's an opportunity for a country like Indonesia to look at some of these new modes of testing or new models of testing and to adopt them for the benefit of the population. Next. Okay. The digital health, and I mentioned this before as well, if you look at the leverage of digital, it has had a profound impact on how the healthcare industry is operating today. And one of the strategic imperatives is to focus on, for a lot of that digital health industry, is to look at how do you bring in new platforms, because there's so much of pressure today, and most of the telehealth platforms have seen more than 100% increase in the traffic. And in some cases, it's gone beyond 100%. And there has been a lot of pressure for companies to be able to bring in new solutions to the market. And that pressure is really, will sort of bring in an element which is a rapid solution, but that really still has to meet the requirements of the clinicians, and that has to meet the requirements of the FDA as well. And hence, it's important to look at companies to look at how can they how can they bring products faster to the market, how can they develop a rapid solution proof without really sacrificing the requirements in terms of what is required to deliver outcomes to the patient. We are looking at regulatory support from the government. Largely, this is a case in the Southeast Asia region. Although the regulatory authorities have approved a lot of the telemedicine or the telehealth platforms today as the first screening criteria for COVID patients or patients who are likely to have COVID symptoms. But acceleration of the regulatory support from the governments will really help digital platforms, the adoption of digital platforms to accelerate. And that will also increase the investments. And Indonesia is one of those countries that has a larger setup of startups in the digital health space, and also unicorns in the digital health space. And it's imperative that the regulatory bodies start looking at collaborate with the participants to be able to approve these through the FDA, and in some cases could be looked at it from a reimbursement standpoint as well. We're looking at telehealth, telemedicine as areas. I think, and we have spoken about this. We have seen a lot of the companies in Indonesia, Halodoc, playing a major role, not just in terms of looking at it from a COVID patient's standpoint, but also looking at it from non-COVID patient standpoint. And that's been a real impact on the digital health industry. Next. So what are the opportunities for players in the digital health space? One is, I think the need for real-time data interoperability, again, platform agnostic telehealth, telemedicine, remote patient monitoring platforms are very critical. Access to data by all legitimate stakeholders, in an open and secure environment is the critical aspect, because if there's no interoperability, then it becomes very challenging for the hospitals to collaborate with the telehealth platforms, or any clinics to collaborate with the telehealth platform companies. At the same time, privacy and security also will be a key aspect to look at from a telehealth standpoint. And hence that will become, data security will become a key. So there are a lot of opportunities for players who are in the data security space, companies that are looking at building in interoperability, integration of platforms in the digital health industry. We are looking at companies that have digital platforms, not just from a telehealth standpoint, but also in terms of enhanced clinical decision support systems, and looking at how do companies really use digital technology to be able to make a precise decision, or an outcome with precision. So that's, I think, is extremely critical. Hospitals' adoption of digital health will become imperative, not just during the COVID situation, but even the post-COVID situation. And when we look at on-demand access to care, I think we're talking about a complete 360-degree view, and that also sort of ties back to interoperability as well. But I think it's very critical to have a 360-degree view of the patient, and larger part of that also comes in from looking at different areas as well. It's just not about chronic diseases, but it's also about the behavioral health areas. Looking at health and wellness than just looking at healthcare as a priority. And one of the research or the surveys that Frost&SULLIVAN did, we found that all the countries in Southeast Asia, there was at least a 60% increase in response from the population to say that they are looking at health and wellness. Their investment in health and wellness is going to increase, both in terms of either using wearables or using telehealth as a platform, or the consumption of supplements or nutraceuticals, to be proactively managing their health than, really looking at healthcare, from that standpoint. Next. So having looked at the hospital space, having looked at the life sciences segment and the digital health segment, we have the last two segments that we'll be covering. And these are large. This one of them is the medical technology industry. The next one that I'll cover is the imaging space. Now, these are two industries that have been hit quite badly by the COVID situation. In some cases, some of the medical devices have seen a growth, but largely when you talk about more surgical devices used for surgical areas, that's where the companies have really taken a hit, because a lot of the non-elective surgeries, or even some of the elective surgeries have been postponed, but largely the non-elective surgeries have been postponed, and hence, you don't really see the uptake of these devices. But what has happened? What is the impact of COVID on the medical technology industries? We are looking at shutting down of manufacturing sites, and that has really had an impact on the supply chain of the medical device industry itself. On-hold elective surgeries have led to reduced consumption, and that has had a negative impact on the industry. If you look at things like stents, if you look at some of the other products or devices being used during surgeries, that have had a negative impact. But if you look at, on the other hand, if you look at products like ventilator, monitoring devices, and those have actually increased. If we look at, in a lot of countries have sort of relooked at some of their new ways of manufacturing, or adopted new manufacturing sites for manufacturing of some of these medical devices. And similar is the case in Indonesia as well. Some of them have started thinking about repurposing some of their manufacturing sites, or even their technology and their ability to manufacture for these medical devices. At the same time, when we are looking at medical devices, I think what we have seen is also the leveraging of technology. We have seen a lot of the robotics or robots coming into play, for infection control. And we all know that the healthcare workers in the front line are the ones who are being impacted. So there are ways in which companies have started looking at use of technology. Hospitals have adopted some of these, the use of technologies, largely looking at robots, looking at disinfecting robots, looking at robots that can take temperature, robots that can, monitor the patients as well. So I think these are some of the critical aspects from medical technology standpoint, which has had a big impact. But on the other side, we are seeing companies trying to repurpose manufacturing, but also technology being used to manage, the COVID patients. And this is also going to be in deployment from a long-term standpoint, and it's just not during the COVID time period. Next. So the growth opportunities in medical technologies, one is very clearly looking at patient engagement. I think we believe that a lot of this, what we're talking about in terms of looking at how do you engage with the patients, not just at the hospital or the clinics, but outside the hospital settings. How do you sort of work along with the patients? I think that's a very critical aspect. And there are a lot of opportunities for companies in the medical devices space. We find a lot of companies using digital therapeutics as an area that goes along with some of these medical devices, largely for cardiac and diabetes, but this will only increase over time in different disease areas as well. We're looking at rising hospital demand. Operational efficiency becomes a key as we move forward, because hospitals will be trying to recover from the COVID situation, and hence they would definitely be looking at increasing patient pool, looking at how do you increase the adoption of technology that will increase efficiency, that will bring in more optimization of the workflows itself. So I think those will be critical, and we will also see in this whole the post-pandemic as well. We believe that one of the areas that will have investment will be what we call as the command centers for hospital, which can clearly monitor the infrastructure, the capacity, of the hospital itself, and try and position the availability of the infrastructure, the capacity to take in more patients. So that is something that we believe would drive a lot of hospitals to adopt a lot of those digital analytics, command center sort of digital dashboard sort of a technology. We have spoken about this adoption of innovative approaches. Things like 3D printing, although these could be very early stages, but there are opportunities in areas like orthopedics and others where 3D printing could be looked at. There are automation areas. There are localization of medical manufacturing. I think those are some of the things that can really work in favor of the country itself, where where it's importing a lot of these medical devices. That could be one of the areas to look at from an Indonesia standpoint. Next. The medical imaging industry has been badly hit, and this is largely because you don't really have patients coming into the hospitals, whether it's elective, non-elective, but then patients have been able to postpone some of these imaging sort of procedures. One of the challenges, and that has had a very negative impact in terms of the radiology department revenues itself, and also has an impact on the companies that are in the imaging industry. Remote diagnostics will definitely emerge as one of the key areas. We are looking at e-radiology as an area, and looking at radiology as a service. So there are new business models that are emerging in the imaging space because of the COVID situation, or rather, these were present before the COVID situation, but these have only accelerated. The adoption has accelerated during the COVID situation, and we believe that this will only have a positive impact as we move forward when you adopt some of these digital platforms from an imaging standpoint. Supply chain has been, again, a critical aspect. I'm not going to go deeper into that. But what we are talking about is looking at some of the technology innovations, and we are talking about the need or the necessity for collaborative and coordinated care technologies, which means that the adoption of PACS, the adoption of enterprise imaging systems will only accelerate, because that allows a lot of physicians to collaborate, especially if they are not within the hospital premises. How do they collaborate outside the hospital premises? So these are some of the aspects that are sort of have an impact on the medical imaging industry, and going forward, this will only have a positive impact on the industry itself. Next. So we're looking at adoption of teleradiology and AI in imaging. And when we speak about imaging industry and AI, or rather the AI industry, imaging has been one of those sectors within the healthcare industry that has a higher adoption as compared to any other segment within the healthcare space. And this is only going to increase, in the post-COVID situation as well. Some of the aspects that have been challenging as well is in terms of the imaging volumes, and as the COVID situation eases, there is only going to be an increase or a spike in the imaging volumes because of the backlog that the backlog of the imaging procedures. And that will only translate into the radiologist burnout and the lack of capacity to be able to analyze any of these images. And that is only going to sort of increase the adoption of teleradiology, looking at AI in imaging, primarily from a standpoint of making those decisions, accurate decisions, and to be able to make them quickly. Collaboration between providers and clinicians, there is an opportunity here looking at mobile portable imaging systems, because again, from a standpoint of utilization of the products or the equipment, a lot of those have not been able to, or the utilization has been low because these are high capital equipments and immovable equipments. But there will be an increase in terms of mobile and the portable imaging systems. There's already high adoption of portable ultrasound sort of systems, and this will only increase. We are looking at managed models in imaging. We are talking about outsourced models in imaging. You're talking about report as an output. You're not charging for the process, but you're really charging them on the reports that are delivered. Talking about a fee per scan, you're talking about platform as a service. So new business models emerging in this space, because the capital expenditure is going to be a huge sort of impact area for hospitals and radiology centers. So different models being sort of leveraged is what we see going forward for the imaging industry. Next. So that's sort of really looking at the impact and the opportunities for companies, the post-COVID situation. What we also believe is, when we look at all these opportunities, some of the important aspects that the players have to keep in mind and work towards is really looking at cash and liquidity crisis, and that will only impact the players in a big way. So new business models can really sort of look at bring in cash, reduce the cost of operations. Employee morale, motivation, I think these are some aspects, these are some softer aspects, but becomes very critical at this point, whether it is hospital workers or employees in the medical device, pharma or diagnostic or imaging space. Looking at re-looking at the supply chains, diversifying the supply chains, bringing in more transparency with the use of digital to be able to have some visibility into the supply chains becomes very critical. Looking at how do you change the business models, and I think we have seen a lot of changes that are already happening from a business model standpoint. Companies today are looking at how can they interact with the physicians without being there physically in front of the physician. How can they build new patient engagement models? How can they bring in insurance companies to be able to reimburse those new patient engagement models? So these are some of the aspects that companies have to really look at, when they look at opportunities and to be able to grow the post-COVID situation. So that's the end of the presentation from my side. Thank you so much. It's again been a privilege and a pleasure to be presenting on this platform.
네, 발표를 해주신 프로스트&설리반 테니스 부사장님 감사합니다. 다음은 두 번째 순서로 뉴노멀 시대 인리 보건의료 분야 정책 방안에 대해 인도네시아 보건복지부 이브은코 차관보님께서 발표하십니다.
Distinguished webinar participants, ladies and gentlemen, a very good morning. First of all, I would like to thank the Korean Embassy in Jakarta for giving me the opportunity to join this important webinar. Today, I will share a presentation on Indonesia healthcare industry in the era of new normal, with focus on pharmaceuticals and medical devices industry. These slides show us about scope of my presentation today. First is about investment opportunities towards Indonesia healthcare developments. Second is regulatory on pharmaceuticals and medical devices. And third is the government policy in the era of new normal or post-COVID-19. Distinguished participants, I will start with Indonesia healthcare development and the investment opportunities. From these figures, we can see that healthcare industry is developing. Our national healthcare spending record an increasing trend since 2013, with spending of 298.4 trillion Indonesian rupiah to 2017, spending of 436.5 trillion Indonesian rupiah. Same figures was recorded in number of hospitals, where there is significant improvement from 2015, which is 2,488 hospitals to 2,9 which is 2,877 hospitals. These figures shows Indonesians are utilizing healthcare in increasing trend in this will enlarge our healthcare market size. In terms of ease of doing business index, Indonesia put a progression to invite investment. As shown on slide, ease of doing business of Indonesia raised from rank 129 in 2013 to rank 72 in 2018. Indonesia considered to be one of Asian countries with better improvement on easy doing of business, as well as compared with BRIC countries. This is an outcome of substantial improvement made by Indonesian government on governance and bureaucracy. Responding to increased number of healthcare utilization and growing number of healthcare facility, there is a need of medical devices, especially for new and high-tech devices. The government of Indonesia welcomes the high-technology medical devices to serve the need of Indonesia healthcare industry. Investment in this category of medical devices is needed to better opportunity to gain fiscal incentive. In this slide, we see that projected Indonesia's import medical devices market have been increased every year. It means that Indonesia welcome to other countries to invest, especially for new technology medical devices. The government is encouraging Indonesia pharmaceutical industry to transform their business, not only serve its formulation industry, but also become a research-based pharmaceutical industry that begins with the mastery of drug raw materials. Due to the recent investments that are urgently needed by Indonesia are: first, Indonesia of raw materials with 100% foreign capital ownership limits. Second, industry of finished product or patented medicines with foreign equity participation up to 85%. In addition to investment, Indonesia needs to improve domestic medical device industry. There is an opportunity of investment through the class C and D medical devices product manufacturer that open 100% to foreign direct investment. Government set up some incentive to investment made on pharma manufacturers. Government welcome investment on high-tech, research-based, and innovative product of pharma with limit of foreign ownership up to 85%, as I mentioned before. Similar incentive provided to research-based raw material manufacturers that bring their upstream to downstream technologies to invest in Indonesia, where the limit of foreign ownership may up to 100%. The ease of business licensing granted through implementation of online single submission, we call OSS, that could be used in proposing pharma industry licensing, GMP license, and product marketing approval. Ladies and gentlemen, other incentives set by the government for investors on pharma and medical devices manufacturer is fiscal incentive. Investor may propose to have special rates on import duty, machinery, and imported material. Investors also may seek for special incentive on tax if they are considered pioneer industry or performing R&D activity to produce invention and innovation in Indonesia. Our government invites foreign investment to enter Indonesia. Distinguished participants, next is about regulatory on pharmaceuticals and medical devices in Indonesia. Indonesia is committed to develop pharma and medical device industry. This is shown by the stipulation of President's Instruction number 6 year 2016 on the acceleration of development of the pharmaceuticals and medical devices industry. The Ministry of Health has followed up the mandate by using Ministry of Health Regulation number 17 year 2017 concerning the action plan for the development of the pharmaceuticals industry and medical devices, which serve as a guide for stakeholders to advance the domestic industry. The implementation of this regulation is expected to encourage investment. Research-based pharmaceutical and medical device industry are widely open in Indonesia and also expected to increase production of generic drugs. Therefore, the government encourages both local and foreign investment on high-tech medical devices to run the business in Indonesia. Indonesia regulated pharmaceutical sectors in pre-market and post-market approach. Indonesia active as member and participant on international cooperation on medicine such as ICH and WHO. For pre-market control, Indonesia regulates manufacturer license, distribution license, and registration license or marketing. While in post-market control, we regulate biosampling, monitoring, vigilance, advertising, enforcement, and auditing. In the field of medical device, Indonesia also regulates on pre-market and post-market, and the regulatory approach applies since 1999. Indonesia is an active member and participant on medical device organization which is adopt and comply with global standards such as AMDD, EHWP, APEC, and IMDRF. Indonesia regulated medical devices pre-market through manufacturer license, distribution license, and marketing approval. In the post-market control, it regulated and executed by sampling, monitoring, vigilance, advertising, enforcement, and auditing. As member of ASEAN, Indonesia had implemented AMDD and risk classification of medical device in Indonesia divided into 4 classes, namely class A, B, C, and D, from low risk to high risk. This regulation refers to MDD, where the risk classification is based on the potency of risk that cause an impact to the patient user. Indonesia risk classification class is similar with EU practices with slightly differences in the use of alphabetics and Roman number. On performing pre-market control, level, service level agreement which focus on providing access to appropriate device with minimal time-consuming process. This SLA is routinely monitored and evaluated, and as a result, it becomes the shortest service level agreement compared to other countries in this slide. This short SLA is designed to protect the aspect of public health and intellectual property rights, so people and inventors or applicants should not feel any doubt in the regulatory process. Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, lastly, I will talk about the government policy in the era of new normal or post-COVID-19. In order to accelerate the importation of the product related to COVID-19, government set exception of import trade system licensing and regulate the HS code for certain medical devices. The government of Indonesia issued several regulations related to the COVID-19 pandemic situation, such as regulation of the Minister of Health number 7 in 2020, entry of medical devices through special access scheme. And the other one, Minister of Health Decree number 218 in 2020 regarding medical devices and in vitro diagnostic medical devices and household health products that are exempted from the import business license in the context of combating COVID-19. To encourage increased availability of medical devices and household health products needed in handling COVID-19, the government has implemented several policies such as service time acceleration, which is one-day service after the requested data is completed, simplification of requirement, and additional service day on weekend as well as public health. The policy are implemented on granting product licensing, production, and distribution certificate, especially for PPE, ventilator, hand sanitizer, thermometer, and several devices in household health products needed in handling COVID-19. In an effort to improve effective, efficient, transparent, and accountable public services, the Ministry of Health has simplified this licensing system and process for the pharmaceuticals and medical devices industry. This is shown by the acceleration of the provision of manufacturer license for the pharmaceuticals and medical devices industry, distribution license, registration license for medical devices and household health products. During the COVID-19 pandemic, the issuance of product license for related product was also accelerated with the one-day services. Ladies and gentlemen, Indonesia has regulated post-market control for medical devices as well. In pandemic COVID-19 situation, there are several activities have been implemented in Indonesia, such as sampling and testing for medical devices aims to control the safety and quality of the medical devices in market, especially for PPE products. Handling of complaint and vigilance reports and other activities for post-market control has been implemented in Indonesia. As an additional response the pandemic, Ministry of Finance has regulated the fiscal incentive for industry. There are two regulations have been issued by Ministry of Finance. The first one, the Ministry of Finance Regulation number 44, year 2020 about tax incentive for taxpayers affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. Second one, Ministry of Finance Regulation number 83, year 2020, regarding import duty facility and tax facility on goods for medicines for COVID-19 pandemic handling. The government hopes that these two regulations can support the industry in dealing with COVID-19 as well as maintaining economic conditions. Ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about implementation of medical device control during the new normal era. As we are aware, in the condition of new normal, everything will not be the same as usually. There are many interventions to adjust with the current condition. This is also happened in the context of regulatory system. Indonesia also implementing the medical devices control during the new normal era. The principle of controlling the medical devices during new normal is how to balance the pre-market control and post-market control. This balancing intervention is using the digital technology to ensure or safeguard of the safety, quality, and efficacy or performance of medical devices. For example, pre-market control in the new normal. The first one, optimize the use of digital information technology in the process of licensing for the facility as well as product license. Second one, focus on new medical device innovation. Third one, adjustment the requirement in the new normal condition. For example, for clinical evaluation, certificate of resale, letter for authorization, and supported document. The fourth one, easiness and flexibility of consultation or assistance through virtual system. For the post-market control in new era, will be first one, conducting remote audit to production and distribution facility. The second one, the use of information and technology to conduct monitoring or vigilance. The third one, optimize the use of electronic-based reporting for e-report and e-rewards. And the fourth one, conducting medical device product sampling through the online courier services. Both the pre-market and post-market control has the main purpose to enhance the compliance of industries and distributors upon the requirements and regulation of medical devices. Distinguished participants, this is the end of my presentation. I wish this presentation will provide you with beneficial information and enhance our bilateral cooperation between Indonesia and Korea in the field of pharmaceuticals and medical devices. Thank you. 감사합니다.
네, 이미 보건의료분야 발표를 해주신 보건복지부 이부은꼬 차관님 감사드립니다. 뜨리마카시 2부 마지막 순서입니다. 한인리 유망의료폰 합작 협력 방안에 대해 인도네시아 멘사그룹의 닥터 헨슨 그룹 헤드 오브 프로젝트 매니저님께서 발표하십니다.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the time. They are the Ambassador of Republic of Korea to Indonesia, Mr. Pak Tae-sung. They are Director General of Pharma and Medical Device, Ibu Engko Sosialin. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you to KOTRA inviting me to share our experiences working together with Korean company. My name is Hansen, Business Development from Mensa Group, Indonesia. I think we can start with the slide. Okay, my name is Hansen, Corporate Business Development from Indonesia. I was graduated as a medical doctor from Pajajaran University in Bandung in 2001. On the same year, I was joined PT Auto, one of the company in Mensa Group, as a product manager until 2006. With a good opportunity from our company to expand the company business, that year I was moved to handle business development. And in 2011, the management has given me to an additional responsibility as a corporate function in business development unit until now. So actually, this event reminds me to the first event that I was invited by KOTRA. On that time, I was met so many Korean companies in Seoul in 2007. It has been around 13 years until now. And KOTRA has supported us and introduced us with so many good candidates. Even until now, we have established some cooperation with Korean companies, of course, with the support from KOTRA. One of the key important point of the cooperation with KOTRA, with Korean companies, one of them is happened in 2015 when we do signing ceremony with Korean company to establish a joint venture company in Indonesia. On that time, Auto Pharmaceutical Industries Indonesia, one of our company, do the cooperation with one of the biggest pharma company in Korea, CKD Farm. It's an honor for us to be trusted as a joint venture partner with one of the biggest pharma company in Korea. Okay. First of all, I will give you some brief introduction about the group Mensa Group. We are Mensa Group, a group of companies under the management of Mensa Group. We work for the healthcare business. Starting in 1975, our founder, Mr. Sudarta, established a trading company with the name Menjangan Sakti. Since that time, our company being appointed with so many reputable European companies to distribute their products and raw material in Indonesia. With our value-meeting commitment and balanced and lasting relationship, we have maintained our partners, our cooperation with so many of them. Even until now, there was still so many companies have worked with us for a long time. Some of them even more than 40 years with us. Next. As a group companies, we are expanding our business, our business capabilities, not only for the raw material distribution, but also with manufacturing companies. We acquired Auto in 1981, and also we acquired Lanson Pertiwi Agung in 1984. We are strengthened our business with distribution company. We acquired MBS in 1986. And of course, we are keep expanding our business with manufacturing of dental equipment, medical devices, also distribution medical device, baby products, and also clinics. And also, our son of the founder also developing one of the famous online business platform in Indonesia for healthcare. Basically, we are also expanding our business, and also we are focusing also to export some of our product to some countries. So, as a growing companies, our marketing team are also improve their capabilities. And of course, we need to give them a good products, a good ammunition to expand our business and keep growing. Next slide. So, as a part of my responsibility as business development, I have to find a good partners. I have to find a good products. Actually, if we are looking for a partner, a strong partnership, looking for a candidate is similar with looking for the married partner candidate. So, for a good young girl, of course, we will looking for a handsome boy, and I'm sure it's a good opportunity for us to find them in Korea. It's a good opportunity for us to find a good partner in Korea. I think all of us agree about the K-pop, one of the most famous handsome boy and girls from Korea. Everybody knows about them. And even so many people in our office also and my family also become the big fans of so many Korean K-pop. And I'm sure with a good example that the K-pop is so popular, I'm sure that looking for the partner in Korea also a good opportunity for us. And to find the partner, the most important thing is about the reliable partner. We have to find a good the good partner with a good commitment, and also being trusted is our main concern. The other things, of course, we need to find a good and promising products, a good quality, a good technologies, and also having a good innovation, and also about the affordable price of pricing is also our main consideration. And of course, with the support from KOTRA, we already met so many candidates from Korea. Some of them fit with our expectation, and also some of them we thought that they meet with our expectation. With the long time period, we have long experiences with so many companies. We met so many good people, not only companies from Korea. In Korea also there are so many good people, even not only targeting only for the business, but also we have a good relationship with them. Even there is no business relationship, but we are still contacting with so many of them. So, okay, if we are looking for a good husband, we hope that you will look us also as a beautiful girl, attractive, not only for our company, but also our country. The next slide, please. Okay, with this information, I think this is Indonesia. I hope that you all agree with us. Indonesia is a good, beautiful, and yes, very attractive. I think it will be a good thing to do the cooperation. You can see here we have a huge market. We have 260 million people. I'm sure who will not be interested with us. We also have a good GDP growth, means in the future it will be a promising buying power. And also about the politics, the most important is about the stability. With a long-term investment, we have to be sure about the political stability. Another things, we are discussing about medical market. All of us will agree with me, as long as there are people, there will always be a health issue. Since from the baby until the elderly, there are always a health issue, not about the sickness, but about the health issue, a well-being and a well-living. And because of this medical business, there will be always a good opportunity. With our current national security system, BPJS, I think we already have run this BPJS already for 7 years. Also have 100% coverage, means Indonesia have a huge market. I think, yes, with this information, I think all of us will be agree that Indonesia is beautiful and attractive. And another thing, Ibu Engko will be agree also that it will be a good time for us to invest in Indonesia because Indonesia is ready for the investment. Talking about the investment, I'm sure this one is the most important because all of us already know about Indonesia. Indonesia is one of the largest Muslim population in the world. With this benefit, I'm sure if you do the investment in Indonesia, and also with the new implementation of halal policy, it sure will help you to expand your business not only for Indonesia, but from Indonesia will open the doors to another country like MENA or other Islamic countries. Okay, we talked too much about the engagement. Now we are going to the next step. I think if both company already agree, then we continue with the wedding reception. Okay, this is the joint venture. As I have mentioned before, we started the joint venture with Cheongkundang, CKD Farm Korea in 2015. And in 2019, the facility of CKD Auto Oncology facility is ready and inaugurated last year to become one of the first halal oncology facility in Indonesia. We are very proud of this. We believe we will have a good business, not only for Indonesia market, but also export it to other countries. Next slide. To prove the commitment from both sides, when we meet expectation, there will be a good business to start. For example, this year, we will launch one of the product called Fardipin. This product comes from the production by Korean company, imported by us, and will be promoted by Otto in Indonesia. Next, the other cooperation also, we do the cooperation for the product, for the aesthetic products. Because all of us will agree with us that Korea is well known as a good aesthetic beauty business. So we are looking for product from Korea, and we found some of the product, and we are expecting to launch the product from them within this year. Another things, we are already distributing some of the raw material API from Korea for pharma and cosmetics. This is the raw material business. And we trust also the quality from Korea. Besides our machinery from Europe, we are also using some Korean origin machineries to set up in our facilities. Okay, next slide. Okay. If we are talking about the success cooperation stories, of course, we are also not covering about the failures. We found so many challenges to make success, to prepare the success of the cooperation. The most important things, number one is the issue about the registration. There's no business without permission, without permit. There's no business without registration. Our expected business here is about pharma business, about medical device business. It's all about medical. It is not about K-pop. If we are registering K-pop in Indonesia, of course, we are sure that it will be accepted in Indonesia. But when we are talking about medical device, we are talking about regulation. We have to be careful about the products. When we are doing innovation, which is so many Korean companies doing this innovation, this is very good and very beautiful things to have a good innovation product. But we have to be more concerned about the regulation. We have to be more concerned about the clinical trials. There are regulations to follow. Regulations are about guidance to have a good and safety product. I'm sure the Ministry of Health, Ibu Engko, also will agree with us. To be sure that we will have a good and safe product, we have to follow the regulation. And another small matters that are about pricing and quantity. It will become issue when there is miscommunication, misunderstanding when we are set up the pricing and the quantity. All of us should understand that Indonesia is not Korea and Korea is not Indonesia. So to avoid the further conflict, we have to agree about the strategies how to penetrate Indonesia. Pricing, we need to decide which segment to be targeted and how about their buying power. Quantity also will become the issue. If we choose the huge 100% market, for example, the market that covered by BPJS, means that you have to be prepared about the price competition. If you are expecting for a high quality and high price, of course, the market will not be like that big. It will only be limited by a certain numbers. Okay, next slide. Next. Okay, I think this will help you to understand about the key of success factor to be a cooperation. Winning people will be needed. People with experiences, skill, and also knowledge, it will be needed to have a good cooperation. They will deliver the product. Of course, the product should be trusted, should have a good quality, and of course should meet the regulation with the affordable price. We are not talking about the cheap price or the expensive price. The most important is about the affordable price. And after that, we have to distribute to the right place. We have to define the strategy. Are we going to penetrate to all Indonesia market, which is from Sabang until Merauke? There are thousands of islands and thousands of cities. Are we going to cover all of them? Or are we going to specify our target to some cities? We have to define the first the first is we have to define the strategy. After that, we can define who will become our partners. Okay, next slide. Okay, this is Indonesia New Normal. In Indonesia, New Normal called AKB, Adaptasi Kebiasaan Baru. When we are working for healthcare business about medical, many people think that this is the beneficial for us, that so many people will have sick, will have COVID-19, will worried, they will panic, they will buying this and that. But we have to understand that there's an opportunity, but also there's a direct impact from COVID-19. You can see that people are afraid of visiting healthcare facilities. Doctors and pharmacy are afraid of serving sick people. All of them are afraid to be infected by COVID-19. This give a huge impact for us. Even for the first 3 months, I think the business in Indonesia for the healthcare is quite terrible. Even the numbers of vitamin, the demand is high, but we have some difficulties on the time. Nielsen said that within the first 3 months, the vitamin consumption is increased. Yes, that's right. But not only vitamin C, hand sanitizer, protection like hazmat suit, face mask, and so many things are rising up. There's a huge of needs in Indonesia, a huge of demand. Even the price is increasing very high. Some of them become more than 10 times. But that's only a short-term period. After that, the situation will become more stable. For example, today, the demand of vitamin C is even still higher than before, but there are already so many new players. There are already so many supply in the market. So there's still a competition, and the supply is already there and the demand is even higher, the supply still can fulfill the demand. Some of the surveys said that, this is for JAKPET, there are huge changes in the healthcare behavior, the health behavior and lifestyles. People are more concerned about personal hygiene, more washing hands, more using hand sanitizer, and using face masks, and also they are planning for more on their healthy life. For example, more exercise, like cycling, and also looking for healthy food. There are also changes in the activities. There are so many offline activities before, now become shifting to the online. There are so many online activities today. But with this condition, we also have to be understand about the situation. Staying alive is not only about the health issue, but also about economic, also about social life. So many people need to eat. We have to find the food for our families. Also need to meet people, relatives. That's all what we need. So this situation will drive people to move outside. Okay, next slide. So, in my opinion, all medical business will slowly recover from the previous damage from COVID-19. People will adapt to the new normal. There will be online activities and the economic will run. On the beginning, we do the stay at home, make a physical distancing, wearing masks, washing hands. There will be a new adaptation. People will move out. And that will do, we will find it everywhere in Indonesia. So everywhere, everything will be better. Next slide. This is the most updated situation in Indonesia. Jakarta is entering the new lockdown. Jakarta governor has stated that lockdown has been started since yesterday. This situation driven by the numbers of people that infected by COVID-19 are still rising up. They are worried that ICU capacity in hospital will not be enough. There is more than 100 doctors in Indonesia has already passed away infected by COVID-19. They are infected by COVID-19 while they are treating patients. This is a huge number. 100 doctors is not little number. This is a huge number. And even you can compare to other countries, this number is quite huge, and this keep worrying us, keep worrying the government. That's why Jakarta government make a lockdown in Jakarta. But are we going to be afraid to invest? Are we going to be afraid to prepare for the new business in the future? I don't think so. In my opinion, we have to prepare to face the changes. There are the changes in the future. After the changes, there will be a new opportunities. There will be the new opportunities to come. Even after this COVID, or even within this COVID, within this situation, there will be always a new opportunities. So, are we going to be left behind because we are not ready? Or we are going to be well prepared and we will get the good opportunities in the future? In my opinion, it's better for us to make a good preparation, and we will be ready for the next chance and opportunities. Okay, thank you very much for the time. This is my presentation. 감사합니다.
네, 한인이 유망 협력 분야에 대해서 발표해 주신 맨사그룹의 닥터 헨선 그룹 헤드 오브 매니저먼트님 감사드립니다. 금일 웨비나는 여기서 종료하겠습니다. 웨비나를 시청해주신 여러분께 다시 한번 감사의 말씀을 드립니다. 질의사항은 유튜브에 남기시면 저희가 각 발표 연사분들께 전달하겠습니다. 다시 한번 시청해주셔서 감사합니다. Terima kasih.